When you need to build up your team to handle the growing chaos at work, use Indeed Sponsored Jobs. It gives your job post the boost it needs to be seen and helps reach people with the right skills, certifications, and more. Spend less time searching and more time actually interviewing candidates who check all your boxes. Listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit at Indeed.com/podcast. That's Indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions apply. Need a hiring hero? This is a job for Indeed Sponsored Jobs.
This message is brought to you by Apple Card. Shave ice by the beach. A trip to the state fair. And a throwback flick at the local drive-in. They're more than just items to check off the summer bucket list. They're also opportunities to earn 2% daily cash back when you use your Apple Card with Apple Pay. Apply for Apple Card now and use in-minutes with Apple Pay. Subject to credit approval. Apple Card is issued by Goldman Sachs Bank USA, Salt Lake City branch. Terms and more at applecard.com.
Visible puts the ultimate wireless hack in the palm of your hand. With unlimited 5G wireless data and hotspot designed to keep you connected, powered by Verizon's 5G network. And no contract holding you back. Plans start at $25 a month, or get the premium Visible Plus Pro plan and save $10 on your first month when you use promo code HACK. Make the switch at Visible.com. Terms apply. See Visible.com for details.
Welcome to Haway, the podcast. It's Martin here, and we've got a Q&A episode for you today. We've got tons to talk about because all of you lovely people have sent in a boatload of questions, either by X or by emailing us at hawaythepodcast@safc@gmail.com. So we'll get cracking as soon as I've introduced my two guests for today. And first of all, we'll say good morning to James Nichols. How are you, James?
Morning, Martin. I'm not too bad today, mate. I'm pretty good. We've woken up this morning with some fine, very funny breaking news from our friends over the river. So that's helped my moods when I'm feeling a little bit under the weather. But no, apart from that, mate, not too bad at all.
You haven't really narrowed down the days, have you, when you say we've woken up to some fine, funny news from our friends across the water? Because that's been many days this summer.
It's been a very fun weekend.
It has indeed. And joining myself and James this morning is Ian Bendelow. Morning, Ian.
Good morning, Martin. Good morning. I'm waiting for the Lewis Hall Here We Go now, so that should arrive in the next week or so. So very excited for that one.
Yeah, that'll be the next cab off the rank, wouldn't it? And hopefully, it's not going to happen. But how good would it be if he just took a little journey south and jumped down 12 miles over the river and ended up as Ronaldo's backup for next season? That would be quite nice, wouldn't it?
Well, we need a bench filler, don't we? So, yeah.
It wouldn't go amiss, I don't think. And that leads us very nicely into a few of our questions here, because we have got lots and lots of questions, as you might expect, on the transfer window. People getting panicky, people getting itchy feet. Or are we playing it really, really cleverly? And we've got a few questions here. Ian, I'm going to come to you first on this, so tune into these questions. Pit Yaka on X has said, call it preposterous optimism, but I am completely of the belief that Flo is playing a transfer blinder. And I must admit, when I first read this question, I thought he was talking about Torrey Andre Flo, and it brought me out in a cold sweat. Keeping every transfer target under wraps and biding his time for the next best possible deal. I fully expect us to sign 4 or 5 within the next few weeks. Am I deluded? That's one question. Alan Davis says he's still relaxed at the moment regarding the incomings, but do you think that those are getting concerned have a point, especially when the club says they want 4 or 5 quality signings? And Dean at Dino Cummings 85 says, for all I am relaxed our incomings at the moment. Regis Labris mentioned we like to keep our work under the radar. Is the radar on? We will be utterly fine. So is Pitjaka being too optimistic? How are you feeling about the transfer window so far, Ian? And what do you expect to happen over the next few weeks?
Well, without wanting to sound like a career politician, they would say something like, let me say this very clearly, there is no reason to be concerned whatsoever. I am not someone who is, jumping for joy as well. I'm just waiting. But I have confidence that this is going to happen. We obviously need to supplement the squad. with a left back, centre back, a third striker, maybe. But what we need to bear in mind is that this is a transfer window which is not like last year's transfer window, and the tendency for fans to compare to what has previously gone before us is maybe making people a little more nervous than they otherwise would have been, because obviously last year we'd had to make wholesale changes to the squad, bring in lots of different players and lots of different positions to give us a fighting chance of staying up. Obviously, we achieved that with something to spare. The concern would be for me, actually, ironically, if we had made 4 or 5 signings right now for X million pounds and the business was done, and we kind of almost gone for shot straight off out there and done something too quickly, because we can't actually afford to get these signings wrong this transfer window, because we're not going to be making umpteen signings, we're going to be making 4 or 5, and they all have to kind of land. So I'd much rather they took their time and chose the targets wisely and negotiated good deals for them, because the market is it's crazy. You see some of the fees that are flying around for players who haven't actually made a huge impact in their home countries, but you're seeing the English tax and you're being taken advantage of a little bit. This isn't a rebuilding job this summer. It's a supplement to squad square. Targeted improvement needs to be the name of the game. But we are hostage a little bit for unseen fluctuations as well. So fans are going to be they're going to be nervous. They're going to be thinking, my God, I'm looking at the relegation odds. I'm saying that we're 3-1 to go down, 4th favourite, and trying to kind of equalise that one in your brain. And that's going to make people a little bit concerned. But the truth is that if this club has done one thing over the last few years, it's earn our trust. Have the internal battle in your brain, Sunderland supporters who are concerned about how you're going to make yourself feel better about the fact that this is a board and a group, an ownership group that know exactly what they're doing. And any battle you need to have is with yourself, by convincing yourself that this will be okay and we will be fine, because you have to enjoy this. We're coming into a season with European football for the first time in 50 odd years. Everything is exciting. It's imploding up the road. It's great. Everything is looking rosy at the minute. And, the lack of transfer business right now is not something to be concerned about, in my opinion.
It's an interesting transfer window, isn't it, James? Because I was trying to reckon up earlier, and I reckon this is a transfer window unlike any that we've gone through for, I think, a couple of decades, because we've actually got a really, really strong and good squad, which we haven't been able to say too often in the past, have we?
I think, to be honest, I think you saying that is exactly why I feel the same as Ian, because I think, look, we've only signed one player in Meunier, and it would be remiss of me not to say that, yes, I would like us to get a few more bodies through the door before the start of the season, of course. But this is why Florian Gazolfi said it's a marathon, not a sprint. Last year was a sprint because we had to have so many players in before the start of the summer, before the start of the season or whatever, because we were so far away from being ready. Not literally a year ago to the day almost of when we played Leeds and Wrexham, we were almost playing, was it around about the same sort of time we were playing Hearts, Hull and Real Betis, and you had Harrison Jones starting at left back, we had Huggins starting one game, Dan Neil starting one game, Robbie wasn't through the door, Nordy wasn't through the door, Granit Xhaka was only just through the door. A lot of our players that have come on to play massive roles over the summer weren't in yet. I think this year is exactly what you said. I mean, we haven't had a transfer window like this for 20 years because we haven't been good, and not many people have wanted to sign our players for 20 years. And I think keeping a hold of the core group is almost like having a new signing in itself. It's almost more important. So I think anyone who's worried about the window, I would say, look, listen to what Gazolfi said. His exact words were a marathon, not a sprint. And that's exactly because of the market, because of the World Cup, because of the overinflation of some of the fees. There's going to be very little movement until late on. That's just around the entire market. You probably won't see, some of the biggest transfer stories won't be resolved until towards the end of the market, because basically the necessity to do so is caused by the deadline existing. And until then, a lot of people will just hold the ground and wait. And that seems to be what we're doing, because essentially, look, I know we need players in positions. We need a backup left centre back or a backup left back, or even better than what we've got, then your current becomes your backup. We need a right winger. We need another striker to replace Mayenda. Potentially a six is back up to Shaka, or like another midfielder in there. Like, we need those roles. But to be honest, I wouldn't be that worried if we'd only signed like one or two of them, because we've already had such a strong squad from last season.
No, that's right. Now, that leads us nicely into a couple of questions or points made by a couple of people who sent things in. So Stephen Mordew says, we know that we need to make new signings to supplement the squad. He suggests left back, centre midfield, right wing and centre forward, which it should be acknowledged our best bit of business so far has been keeping our best players, e.g. Xhaka, Robin Roofs, Noah Siddiqui, Brian Brobby, etc., when I would have expected us to lose two of these. And Billy Blythe says, seems a few people getting itchy feet over signings. For me, a successful window is about keeping our best players in touch with it continues until the window shuts. Are some fans missing the point of this window? Yes, we all want new signings, but keeping our best players is a must. And it's a really important point. Obviously, we set our stall out with that with Granit Xhaka and the Chelsea approach earlier in the summer, didn't we? And the other aspect to this, which I don't think's been discussed too much, is all of these players that we bought in last summer. And, there was wholesale changes last summer because we needed to, as James has alluded to. But you've got the likes of Robin Roofs, Noah Siddiqui, you've got Chemseen Talby, you've got Brian Brobby, you've got Enzo Lefay as well, who was essentially a new signing last summer, although we'd had him on loan for a few months before that. Habib Diarra. All of these players who were new to the club, new to English football, new to the Premier League, and who were still developing and still improving. And those players with a season of Premier League experience under the belt as well. We're going to see different versions of them at the start of this season compared to the start of last season. And, I would be a little bit disappointed. Not disappointed is probably the wrong word. I'd be a little bit concerned if we'd made stacks and stacks of signings now, all to come into the team, because I'd be wondering what on earth we were doing, where the continuation was from last season. So I'm just having a little look at what we have. And, I think we've got so many good players, and it is about complementing what we've got and supplementing what we've got, rather than trying to do wholesale changes. And, you can't, look, I'm older than both of you two. And I remember summers and pre-seasons where you might sign one or two players, and that was kind of the norm. And we've been conditioned, especially as Sunderland supporters, to have these big transfer windows where we get 8, 9, 10 players in, and it's all exciting. People are buzzing up all the rumours and all the transfer activity. But making that many signings isn't necessarily the sign of a good club, a strong team. And
But do you know what? Do you know what I blame? I blame Steve Bruce. When he, I mean, sorry, Steve. Sorry, I don't want to, kick him when he's permanently down. But we seem to start this kind of cycle, this kind of really messy approach to transfer business back in sort of the 2010, 2011, 2009, 2010, something like that. And we just seem to have this huge churn every single summer. And yeah, you're right, man. We got conditioned to that, and we kind of thought, I don't really trust the old guys for the new campaign, so let's get a fresh batch of lads in. But the thing that we need to be really careful of is we don't want to sign people who are going to be bed blockers to players like Talby, because a 21-year-old Talby is better than a 20-year-old Talby, and a 23-year-old Talby is better than a 21-year-old Talby. But you've got to give them a chance to grow and develop. And we've seen these guys get better and better as the seasons got on last year. And it's do you know what? It's actually been a real pleasure to see players like Enzo Lefay flourish, although Enzo's obviously a bit older. But there's younger lads who are just getting better and better. Siddiqui being probably the prime example. And you've got to be really careful not to damage the ecosystem within the squad. To think, players might think, hold on a second, are they being signed to be my replacement? And the key term really is supplementing the squad. And to foster that team spirit and to foster that collective ability to get better as a team. And you want to say to players like Siddiqui, we're signing players to play around you to help you get better and help the team get better, because that's how you develop as a club. You don't just kind of just basically rearrange the deck chairs every single summer. It's just a bad strategy, that. So yeah, I'm perfectly confident. And what I would say as well is that we're only how far away through the transfer window are we now? Probably about 60%. So I would say it's 0-0 to put in football terms. You know, we can't take any conclusions. You know, 3 points on board after 60 odd minutes of any game. So let's just wait and see. It'll be fine. And we might sign players later on, like we signed Robbie. And hey, he didn't start till October last year, but it came good in the end, didn't it? And everybody's forgotten about that. So yeah, we might have a bit of a scramble ahead of Ipswich and Fulham and all that, but everyone's going to be in that position. Everyone's going to be in that position.
They are, but you know what I think as well, and I think this is kind of a little bit overlooked as well with this narrative about transfers. I reckon even if we made 4 signings tomorrow, I reckon we could name now the starting 11, or pretty much starting 11, for the start of the season until the first international break. Because Lebris doesn't chuck players in. He rarely chucks players in who he's just signed. But anyone coming in now will be eased in because we don't need to fill a position. So I reckon between us, we could, and everybody listening could probably write down on the side a version of that will start the first few games. We'll get players in before the window shuts. They'll be eased in during the first international break. And after that, we'll see players come in. I think that unless we brought players in right at the start of the summer, that would have been the same case as it is. Got a question here from Joe Loons, James, and he says, if we retain the current squad and we have 19 first-team players, including Tarby, with the gaps, in my opinion, only right wing, left centre-back, left back, and striker, do you agree with that summation of where we actually need reinforcements?
Yeah. I think pretty much I would say centre midfield as well, but that list is probably in order of importance as well. I think we're desperate for a right wing.
Yeah.
Obviously, Reggie likes to play inverted wingers, the lefty on the right and a righty on the left. So the only person really natural to that we've got in the entire squad at the minute is Jocelyn Tarby, who obviously a young player, still learning these trades, still adapting to the Premier League after joining from the Israeli division. So we're desperate for clear and evident quality that's going to be better than what we've got on that right-hand side. Obviously, there's been links in recent days to Jenny Katamo, Ronaldo's teammate over Sporting, who would fit the bill there absolutely perfectly. And I think that that list is pretty much in order of importance as well. We really need a left-footed left centre-back for certain. We tried to sign John Lasumi a year ago. We're being linked to Tariq Muharemovic, who ended up in Leeds. We're being linked to a couple of other left-footed centre-backs. And I think because of your point, Martin, there, where Lebris likes continuity because he places more importance on working with the players and working on the system rather than particular ability. Say Alderete is expected to return this week with the other 3 players who haven't returned in Xhaka, Mounier and Jameson Talby. Even if he returns this week, he's going to play, potentially 45 minutes against Lens, potentially another 45 minutes against Rennes. So there's a good chance that because of Lebris's favour of continuity, there's a high chance that Luke O'Nien will be starting first game of the season in 2 weeks' time away to Ipswich. Now, I love Luke O'Nien. I think we all love Luke O'Nien. But he's, I think, clear to say we need another person like Alderete, a physically dominant, aerially strong, left-footed defender to be on that left-hand side. Ronaldo's our only senior current left-back at the squad. We've been linked heavily to Diane Metali, and obviously it's well known that the club are in negotiations with Toulouse over a transfer. So it's clear by the links that are being made, the noises that are around the club, there's no smoke without fire, that's the positions we're targeting. Now, striker and centre mid, striker to add on to Joe's list, and then centre mid for my own personal addition at the end there. That's very much like a further down the window line sort of job. Those positions, particularly striker, tend to only really free up in the proper quality, the higher end quality towards the end of the window, like getting Robbie on deadline day a year ago. Yeah. Now, Keith Downey's actually already said on 2 occasions this summer, I think one was when we were linked to Florian Balogun, and the other one was when we were linked to Kefren Turam, saying that Sunderland are not actively looking in this area. Now, he's actually since then corrected it to an extent, but I think he was on a podcast. There was a podcast appearance somewhere that Downey was on. It might have been like on Sky Sports News, maybe. I can't remember off the top of my head. But he's actually said, look, they are going to be looking at these players. He just said what he said was it's not a priority. There's other parts of the squad that needs to fill up first. But I think that's the 4 or 5 positions you're looking at. I think Regis himself has said that he wanted, was it 6 or 7 all in through the door? Um, I think Phil Smith in the Echo said in an interview in a press conference with Regis that he specifically said 6 or 7, of which 3 or 4 are like first team, straight in the team, evidential sort of addition to the quality of the squad. So I think it's pretty obvious where we need strengthening. And I would agree with Joe. I think largely that list, but if you just add that midfielder in there, probably more likely a backup to Xhaka sort of role.
Where do you stand on goalkeepers? Because I would chuck a goalkeeper on that list, Ian. And I'm introducing my own question for you here. This isn't a listener question. This is my question. Because Robin Roofs is fantastic, and he's obviously first choice going at the start of the season. If he got injured and was out for a significant amount of time, do we have the quality to play Premier League, Europa League with the goalies that we have?
You're trying to induce me into saying something negative about Elborg, aren't you? It's not going to happen.
Not the slightest. No. I like Malcolm Elborg. I think he'll be possibly a very good goalkeeper in the future. I would be so nervous about chucking him into a Premier League season if we had to.
Yes, because he's mad. He's very clearly plugged into the moon. That's why, you know. But so's Luke O'Nien, you know, and we love him. Look. Personally, I wouldn't have any issues with Elborg in the group stages of the Europa League. I wouldn't have any issues with him in any of the domestic cups. Clearly, I suppose you shouldn't read too much into transfer fees and how much you've signed a player for, but given that we got him for a relatively low amount, you would suggest that there might be scope for somebody else to come through the door. However, having said that, it's going to be quite a difficult sell for someone to come in at that level, because we do have Elbow, but we've got we've got Matty Young as well, who is hopefully going to be coming through the ranks soon and will be challenging in our senior squad soon. So you got to ask the question as to how long would a solid number 2 be there for? So would it be kind of like an older head on a free, that kind of thing? I think that's the only thing I would say. All right, fair enough to. I don't see any problem with keeping Elbow though. I think he's fine. You know, he played 3 Premier League games for us. He kept 2 clean sheets. People micro-analyze his performances, you know, after he almost got, lobbed by Luke O'Nien at Port Vale and said, his arms aren't long enough and he should have saved that one from that mag who scored, whatever his name was. But ultimately, like, he did well. You know, he did well, and he's played 8 senior games before he came to us in his career. So what are you expecting from a guy who is of that age, of that profile, of that experience? You know, you couldn't really have expected him to come do more than come in and win 2 games out of 3 and generally, hold the fort quite nicely. I think he deserves at least another 10 chances, not even 1 chance, because I think he's a good keeper personally. So
yeah. I do too.
I'm defending Elborg because I like the guy, but I also don't. I think he needs to be invested. Confidence needs to be invested in him from everybody, because he needs that as a young lad, and I think he would be absolutely fine. In truth,
whenever I watch Elborg, I must admit I do feel a little bit nervous. I think he's aerially isn't the greatest, because I think in a goalkeeper what you want basically is you want to feel safe more than anything. You want him just to be like a big spoon, like wrap a big hug around you and just feel safe and come out and wrap everything up. And Roofs is better than that than anyone I can remember since way back in the day, since Tommy Robinson. Tommy Sorensen. Bloody hell. Oh God. Sorry, I just
he was a right winger, wasn't he?
Sorry, I see the notification on my phone about him, and my mind went, Jesus Christ, that's a Freudian slip and a half. Since Tommy Sorensen, and I think Elbow doesn't necessarily give us that, to be honest, because like you said, Ian, he's a youngish player. I mean, he's the same age as Roofs, but he's only played 8 senior games in his career. So I've always got that nagging feeling in the back of my mind. Yet then I think back to Leeds away, I think back to Newcastle away. They're arguably the 2 most emotionally charged, aggressive, difficult away games that we would have faced last year.
Absolutely.
There's better teams than them, of course there are, but when it comes specifically to playing for Sunderland, they're the 2 that are going to be the hardest. They're the 2 that hate us the most. They're the 2 where you go in, it's just a lion's den. And he played in both of those games, and we got 3 points in both of those away from home. Like, keep coming back to those performances. I personally think Elborg deserves to be given time, but I can't help but feel, to be honest, that he's kind of a little bit of a stopgap because we don't want to impede Matty Young's development.
No, there's every possibility of that. And look, my mind in this situation always goes back to when Tony Coton got crocked at Southampton. We had to chuck Lionel Perez in. And for what anybody thinks about Perez, he could not dive to his right-hand side. He struggled with low shots, and I still think we ultimately went down because he was in goal, and if Coton had been in goal, we would have stayed up. And it's just that scenario.
And he missed that cross at Wembley, the Richard Griffiths cross. I mean, he couldn't catch to save his life.
No, I still have nightmares about that. But it's the one position on the field I think you can't sort of fudge along with. Any other player gets injured, you can move people around, change tactics, all that sort of stuff to cope with an absence of a key player. Goalkeeper's a really unique position, isn't it? And again, and obviously, touch wood, this doesn't happen. Early in September, for example, Robin Roos goes out for a number of weeks. Have we got the confidence to chuck Elborg in to be the number one goalkeeper for a sustained period of time, or do we need somebody else anyway? I haven't introduced my own questions. I'm going to lengthen the podcast because I want answers to the things I've been thinking about. I'm going to go back to listener questions now. Hummy at Eat Hummus 1, which I don't know if that's an instruction or what, but Eat Hummus 1. Did we miss a trick, James, on not getting Jordan Henderson, Danny Welbeck, and John Stones? All three are experienced with that depth, minimal costs, so only wages to pay, and English or the Europa League. Do you think there's anything there that the club have missed out on, or are they just not the right type? I guess a very different profile to the majority of players who we're looking at the moment, aren't they?
Yeah. To be honest, I think every club needs to supplement someone like a Talby, like an Angulo, a project player, a young player that I'm going to work with a Xhaka. Now, we already have Granit Xhaka, so I'm not really that fussed about any of them players coming in. I think Welbeck would have been great for someone like Robbie to learn from, but at the age of 35, I mean, Welbeck's probably got another couple of years in him, to be fair. But we brought in Meunier this year for that reason. We added our Champions League experience and all the wealth of experience that Thomas Meunier has. So you only want one or two to supplement the rest of your squad. To be fair to Chelsea, I think them signing Henderson and Welbeck's at the smartest bit of business that they've actually done in years, and I'm surprised by it. So I don't know if we've missed a trick personally, because I think all three of them would have demanded exorbitant wages. Whereas when you're shopping abroad, when you're shopping in the European market, the wages are less, the fees are less, the Asian fees are less, everything around it from a financial perspective is less. And it just makes sense for Sunderland from that perspective. That's why we very, very rarely tend to sign Premier League players. I think since we got promoted and since Gazolfi's been director of football, the only player who was signed directly from a Premier League rival was Adingra. I don't think there's any more off the top of my head without having a list in front of me. And that's for a reason. It's part of our strategy, our transfer strategy, because fees within Premier League games, between Premier League teams, are just massively overinflated. Maxence Lacroix is a very good defender. Is he a 55, 60 million pound defender? Probably not, especially when you can go to Getafe, go to PSG and get Nordi Mukwele and Omar Alderete for 20 million. So I don't necessarily think we missed a trick there, because we've supplemented what they would give us already with keeping Xhaka, having him through the door last season, adding Meunier this season. That's why we've signed them two players. Specifically on the English adding depth for English adding homegrown depth for the Europa League, I actually think this is a far more bigger deal amongst us as fans than it is among the club and among the hierarchy within the club. Gazolfi and Lebris both like small squads. They like to have down towards the smaller end of the 21 to 25, because they believe that it's essentially every single player in that squad is one injury away or one bad performance away by another to getting in the team, and it makes a very competitive squad. That's what they believe. Now, obviously, we do need to make our squad bigger for the addition of the at least 8 Europa League games, plus hopefully more. But in terms of the homegrown, look, you need 4 homegrown from the UK, 4 homegrown from the club. Now, we're not going to get that 8. we're just simply not going to be able to hit that 8, regardless of who you supplement it with. You might say like a Chrissy Rigg put into the A squad just to supplement it instead of being named in the B squad. You might see someone like Mundle stay on, or maybe but that's one of the reasons why Simon Moore signed a new contract to help with that homegrown quota. But I don't think they'll actually even bother trying to hit the full 25 and trying to supplement them with the full 4 and 4, because ultimately they want a smaller squad anyway, and they're going to utilize the under 21 players to add the extra depth for Europe with a focus on the Premier League. So I don't necessarily think we've missed a trick, but we've worked our way around it in other ways by having the experience from elsewhere in more financially viable ways.
Excellent. Well, you've inadvertently answered Warren Carter's question in that summation for that other question now, James, because Warren had asked how will the rules around the Europa League and how many foreign homegrown players will be impacting our transfers this summer. I think you've summed it up quite nicely there. We're going to take a very short break. James is going to go and check up and see what Tommy Sorensen's been up to on social media in the last hour. And we'll have a couple of ads and we'll be back very soon.
When you need to build up your team to handle the growing chaos at work, use Indeed Sponsored Jobs. It gives your job post the boost it needs to be seen and helps reach people with the right skills, certifications, and more. Spend less time searching and more time actually interviewing candidates who check all your boxes. Listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit at Indeed.com/podcast. That's Indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions apply. Need a hiring hero? This is a job for Indeed Sponsored Jobs.
This message is brought to you by Apple Card. Shave ice by the beach. A trip to the state fair. And a throwback flick at the local drive-in. They're more than just items to check off the summer bucket list. They're also opportunities to earn 2% daily cash back when you use your Apple Card with Apple Pay. Apply for Apple Card now and use in minutes with Apple Pay. Subject to credit approval. Apple Card is issued by Goldman Sachs Bank USA, Salt Lake City branch. Terms and more at applecard.com.
Visible puts the ultimate wireless hack in the palm of your hand. With unlimited 5G wireless data and hotspot designed to keep you connected, powered by Verizon's 5G network. And no contract holding you back. Plans start at $25 a month, or get the premium Visible Plus Pro plan and save $10 on your first month when you use promo code HACK. Make the switch at Visible.com. Terms apply. See Visible.com for details.
Welcome back to Haway, the podcast, for our Q&A episode today, and we have got tons of questions to get through, so we're going to crack straight on with an emailed question from Sam and Ian. I'm going to come to you on this one. This is about Brian Brobby and strikers. Sam says, after watching the game against Wrexham and was playing so well off Brobby, how important is it to get another striker in a similar mould to him? I like how we've got Isidore, who offers something different, but feel having another physical striker could allow us to still play that style if Brobby goes off or gets injured. And it's an interesting one, isn't it? Because we've talked so much about how unique Brobby is in his style of play and how he does things that barely anybody else can do. You'd think to find a direct replacement or a direct understudy would be a bit of a challenge, wouldn't it?
Well, I'm trying to think of a similar player to Brian Brobby, and I can't. I just can't think of one. So when it comes to finding a direct replacement, I think that's pointless. And actually, I personally wouldn't want that. You know, you would want a striker in who's going to, complement his skills and his abilities. You know, whether that is, I doubt that they would start alongside him. But later in the game, if you're trying to get back into it or push for a win or whatever. But the problem is, in the strikers' positions, a bit of a unique one really is that it's very hard to get a third striker in when you've already got two in, and to sell the club to them, to sell the opportunity to them to come in and play games. And we had this issue a few years back with Nathan Broadhead. He didn't want to come in and basically play third string, whatever it was, with the other guys that we had in there, and we didn't sign him as a result. So it's a tough one for the club, because again, you don't want to be spending exorbitant amounts on players who aren't necessarily going to get a huge amount of game time. You don't want to be overpaying for players. You don't want to be kind of breaking your budgets or your wage structures and like that. But it is important to keep the competition, as James has said. Just then, the competition and a healthy competition is really, really key. We've lost Mayenda, so we do need to think about that. Is there a young Brian Brobby out there that we don't know of? I always think back to, just because we can't think of who we might like to sign. And actually, we used to do this quite a lot. You think, I want to sign this guy, this guy, this guy. But now we just have given up on that game, because we all know that, in April, you could walk past our new signings in August who would be starting at Sunderland in August and probably not recognise them. You could walk down past them on Fawcett Street and you wouldn't give them a second glance. And all of a sudden they're, wearing the red and white on the opening day. And you're like, oh, it's our new hero. So, look, they're going to have to pluck something out of thin air for a Brobby type character, I think. And it'd be most likely a younger lad who is going to learn from Brobby rather than the other way around. I do think we need one, but kind of, what kind of physical attributes and what kind of profile he's got. Is it someone with more pace who can kind of run around him? Is it someone as physical as him? I don't know. That's conversations that Gazorla will be having with everybody else. So, let's see. But yeah, I think we're doing somebody in, certainly.
Absolutely. Now, James, I've got one question here, which I'm going to throw very quickly at you from Roy of the Rokers. And you mentioned Jenny Katamo, I think, earlier. And he's asked, Matthias Sule or Jenny Katamo, two players who we've obviously been linked with over the summer. I don't know much about them, to be perfectly honest. I'm going to bow to your superior knowledge and ask you which one you prefer.
Ooh, it's a hard one. If I was speaking to my father right now, who's probably going to listen to this, he's got a funny point of view where, because Matthias Sule is Argentinian, he outright refuses to have him want to sign for Sunderland because of what happened during the World Cup in the summer and the way that they went on. But from a playing perspective, look, it's very easy to draw comparisons. But when you watch Jenny Katamo, he is genuinely incredibly similar to some of the players we've been linked in. Moussa Diaby. He's got a very similar playing style to Amad Diallo, where it's all about low centre of gravity, working the ball inside onto his left foot, and basically using his dribbling ability to beat a man. He's almost got a little bit of a similar style to him about him as Patrick Roberts, where, I mean, he's quick, don't get us wrong, he's faster than Roberts, but it's the pace that he's move at that's particularly good. Katamo is very, very adept one-on-one. He's one of the best, he's got some of the best stats in one-on-one in the entirety of Europe last season. Now, granted, he's not playing in one of the top 5 leagues. Obviously, he's playing in Portugal, which is one of those typical just outside the top 5 leagues where it's very top heavy. You've got 3 or 4 clubs at the top, Sporting, Porto, Benfica, who are considerably better than everybody else. So you would expect him to do better. It's kind of like when Gyökeres signed for Arsenal last year. He kind of bullied the rest of the league. Katamo tends to do that. Now, Sule's playing in a better quality league. Obviously, he's in Serie A for Roma. But he's more creative than Katamo, whereas Katamo is far more direct. I personally think Katamo would be a better fit for Reggie's style, in the sense, I love Talby. I think he's a really good player. He's got a lot of room to grow, but I think last year he came on so much. I think Angulo was a bit of a project signing. We signed him in January to get him used to the Premier League to kick on this year. But neither of them are particularly as sort of consistent in one-on-ones as Katamo theoretically could be. Now, obviously, he would have to go through the bedding in period that they both experienced themselves of getting used to English football, the intensity, the pace, the physicality. But his ability to just beat a man, if he can translate that to English football, that would be brilliant for that right-hand side in a registered Breeze team, where the more direct we play, the better we are. Like there's some statistics from last season where it's amount of direct football being played by the team correlated to the points that are being picked up by said team. And like Man City, for example, when they play direct, they tend to lose more games, like quite considerably more than any other team in ratio. Whereas we're the total opposite. The more direct we play, the more points per game we get. So I think he would really supplement that. Sule is also, it would be a good player as well. But I think he's definitely a different style. He's more of a creative player rather than direct running out wide with an ability to finish. So personally, I would like to see Katamo come in. Plus, it would just be interesting to see if we do. I mean, Ian mentioned him earlier, Steve Bruce, how he used to sign 2 or 3 players from the same place when he had Figueroa and Palacios from Honduras at Wigan. And then he came here and he had 3 Ghanaians, he had 2 Paraguayans, and 3 Argentinians. So it'd be nice to have 2 Mozambicans. Give Ronaldo a mate.
There you go, Roy. James and his dad would both sign Jenny Katamo. And the other question on transfers, just to wrap up our transfer talk for this Q&A, Mang the Ram has asked, has any club's signings particularly impressed you this summer? Ian, I don't know if there's a club who's standing out in terms of their transfer activity or you've been keeping an eye on, but has anybody impressed you so far with the moves that they've made?
Not really, no. Because we're just not, we're just not in a position to, we're just not in a position to judge yet. You know, it is early August. Some clubs have been doing pretty well. I mean, you know, Bournemouth, actually, to be fair, I think of the one club, one of the clubs I would say is Bournemouth have looked quite good in some of the signs that they've made. But I think what you probably tend to find is with the transfer windows is that there's a lot of kind of firefighting goes on in the early stages where you're trying to wall off interest in your players, like we had with Granit Xhaka. But it kind of softens up as time goes on. So there are clubs who have obviously been very active. Ipswich have signed many players, a lot of whom I haven't heard of, and some obviously have. None of them stick out at all. But even clubs like, you know, Coventry haven't done much at all yet. And what they have done has been, I would be alarmed if I was a Coventry fan, to be honest with you, because their business doesn't look great. It's more about kind of the slightly sort of panic early days signings that I'm seeing right now. I mean, Newcastle have signed a lot of unknown players who might be good, might not be good, but they've been completely, an absolute howitzer has ripped through their leadership group of that squad. So they are completely and utterly rudderless right now. So it's really difficult to say who's kind of impressed us. The building blocks are there. I'm going to award it to Bournemouth. Well done, Bournemouth. Premier League's 12th longest serving manager, yet to I absolutely love that stat. Yet to manage a game for the club. So yeah, I think that they'll be, you know, they'll be probably the ones who do end up impressing us the most because they just have the recruitment structure, which is right, and they proved that last season actually with, you know, losing, was it 4 of the back 5 and still managed to come and do what they did last season was an absolutely remarkable achievement, more impressive than almost anything else. And any club did, to be fair. So, yeah, it's Bournemouth for me.
Excellent. Rob Ellison Davison has given us a question. James, what do you think is a realistic ambition for this season? League position finish, domestic cups, Europa League, what would be deemed as a successful, mediocre, or poor season, etc.? And it's a tough one to really judge, isn't it? But if you're sitting here now in the very early stages of August, what are you looking for, what are you hoping for, expecting realistically for Sunderland to achieve this season?
Dropped a stinker on us here, Martin. To be honest, I've got absolutely no idea. I mean, the club are upwardly mobile, so the club will be looking to progress far in the Europa League. That's just an absolute given, as far as possible. I think, to be honest, not getting to the quarterfinals as one of the English teams, with the English teams dominating it, not getting to the quarterfinals would be a disappointment, with an obvious caveat of we as a club have never played Europe before, so you would expect us to be inexperienced. I mean, every single time you play in Europe, you'll see like a Copenhagen or a Ludogorets, someone like that who aren't particularly great, but have so much European experience because they win the league every single year. They tend to do quite well, and quite well for them if a team from that sort of country is probably getting to any form of knockout stages. But no, to be honest, intercontinentally, we should probably be getting at least to the quarterfinal. I don't want to get everyone too excited, but the 3 English teams by default are almost the best in the competition pretty much every year. And we've got a better record last season against Palace and Bournemouth than Bournemouth do against Palace and us, and vice versa. Beating them both at home, drawing with them both away. Domestically, I think it's just about minimising those losses. On average, teams tend to, I mean, look, second season syndrome isn't really a thing. I think it's only out of 33 years of Premier League football with the 3 promoted sides coming up every single year, only 10 have ever been relegated on the second season. So I'm not massively worried about that. I think that's just a lazy sort of cliche that someone said once. On average, teams who play in Europe lose about 5 points a season. Well, if we lost 5 points a season, we're still finishing above the mags. We're going to be finishing 10th. So that's kind of where you're looking. I think in an ideal world is probably get very far in Europe. Top half would be brilliant. Even if we do drop off a little bit because of fatigue and was probably dropped down to like maybe 12th, 13th, 14th, that's a good season for me. I don't really care about the domestic cups. I think domestic cups this year is purely about blood and youngsters, getting our younger players playing regular football regularly against whoever they're facing. If we win, great. If we don't, who cares? Because we're in Europe. Ultimately, I couldn't care less about those two competitions this season. So let's just stick Ben Garaguzian, Tom Proctor, Jack Whitaker in it, and let's go and see how you do against senior players, regardless of what league position or what league the opposition are in. So that would be an ideal world. The opposite, obviously, would be relegation and we'll go out in the group stages. But I personally don't think that's happening. Maybe I'm naive, maybe I'm too optimistic. But I just think the trajectory that the club are on, the way that it's being run, the players that we've got, the connection that we're building, the way that it could be all snowballing the last couple of years have been, I would say far in Europe in the top half finish.
I think for us this season, it's a very personal season to all of us as fans because we've got a chance to do something that we've never done before, or most of us have never done before. A chance to go to a European destination to see us play is like the most exciting proposition for me as a Sunderland supporter you could possibly have. Really, it was a long-standing ambition, something that my dad and brother have talked about since I was 7 or 8 years old. When is this going to happen? And what was for a very, very long time, a pipe dream morphed extremely quickly into reality, very unexpectedly. So, that's that is such a personal thing. There's so many people to do so many things with their, their family and friends that they never thought would be able to do. As long as we take care of the business on the pitch in the Premier League and finish, quite honestly, not inside the bottom three. Anything else, I'm not that bothered about. And have a decent cut run in Europe, that would do me.
My 3 dreams is watching Sunderland were like, watch us win at Wembley, watch us away in Europe, and watch us win a trophy. And not a promotion trophy, we've all seen that. A real trophy. And we've done the former twice in the last 3 years, or whatever, 4 years. We've qualified for Europe, and we are going to do that this season. The third one, if we can manage to do that this or next season or whatever, that would just be incredible.
Well, James, you pretty much guaranteed everybody you're going to get the quarters, so that at least is something to look forward to, I think, isn't it? Ian, Mike has emailed in. He said it's so impressive how this club has, from top to bottom, been totally aligned on messaging. With the full squad now back, what are the key talking points or themes that Regis will be emphasising to the players in the dressing room? If you were the gaffer, how would you be setting the tone for this historic upcoming season? There it is. Put yourself in Regis Labrissa's shoes, and what would you be telling the players? How would you inspire them, Ian?
Well, knowing Regis Labrissa as I don't, he would say lines of connection, wouldn't he? That's his mantra, and he has consistently plugged that for the last 2 years. This kind of comes a little bit back to what I was saying there, though, around, us as fans, we've got an amazing opportunity this season, but the truth is that these players do as well. It's not necessarily for a lot of lads like Mutiele and Xhaka who've, played a lot of Champions League football, because, playing Europa League to them as a career, as a career highlight, it would be a highlight, but it wouldn't be sort of the pinnacle of their career. But what these guys have got the opportunity to do is take a club like Sunderland to a place it's never been before. And that's a huge responsibility, say never been before, not been before for many, many years. Basically hasn't been before. And that is a huge privilege. And that is something that will, light a fire into players like Luke O'Nien. Can you imagine the smile on his face when he walks out? It's like Benfica or wherever it might be in the, in the group stages, knowing that this is something that he never thought might happen. You know, and you've got players like Mukiele and Jackie, obviously just mentioned there, that, you know, they have the ability to, you know, that they've basically played a massive role in getting this club to this position. So I would be saying as Regis Labris, you know, go and, go and deliver on that. You know, go and deliver on that as a club. You know, convert the fuel of convert the negativity around, oh, you know, someone might got hurt on TalkSport yesterday talking is Labris going to be the first manager to go this season because if they get up to a bad start and how they're their fourth favourites to drop and everything. You know, confounding the critics, sticking it up them, converting that into the fuel to let you go on and achieve something that nobody thought you would. You know, I mentioned this in a piece I wrote a while ago, but it was like last season, only 3 games were we favourites for. Across the course of the season, 35 people thought we weren't going to get anything from it because nobody understands this football club really. And I might sound like a mag here when I say it's didn't understand, but people don't. People genuinely, they didn't understand what we were trying to do last season. They thought it wouldn't work, and yet it didn't just work, it worked and then some. And that's the thing that Regis Labris has to get into play. It's like, you achieved something remarkable last season. You have the ability to achieve something even more remarkable on a different stage this season. With all those lads and lasses out there in the away ends at massive European stadiums, you know, hopefully in Milan, you know, decked out in red and white, you know, getting the last minute winner, whatever it might be. It's just like, you know, the possibilities aren't necessarily endless right now, but they are massive. And those lads can carry that on their shoulders and they have the ability to do that 100%. And that's what I'll be saying to them.
I think you're right, Ian. I think Regis is going to leave this to Xhaka, to be honest. I mean, if you look at Xhaka's career, he's played in top teams all over Europe. He's won, 9 major trophies, I believe, through his time at Basel, Arsenal and Leverkusen. But interestingly, when he was at Leverkusen, I mean, they went almost the entire season unbeaten. They won the Bundesliga, they won the DFB Pokal, they won the DFL Super Cup in 23-24. They'd done the domestic double in 23-24. And then the very last game of the season, they lost to Atalanta in the Europa League final when Ademola Lookman just decided to turn into Mbappe for 90 minutes. So I think this genuinely could be the pinnacle of Xhaka's career if we manage to go that one step further. He's never won an intercontinental European competition. I think that loss, after going a full season unbeaten, first team to beat Bayern Munich, first team to do a Bundesliga unbeaten, be invincibles domestically, win the cup, and then lose the Europa League in the final game of the season. I think that'll sit in the back of his mind, and I think he's going to drive.
Right. Yeah, I think that's absolutely right because it was what, was it 3-0 in the final at that time as well? So it wasn't even it wasn't even close.
And they got battered.
And it's funny, isn't it? You see that result at the time, you don't realize it has any relevance to us. It suddenly becomes relevant, maybe with Xhaka. I would add one word onto connection there as well. Momentum. You know, we never really got a massive amount of momentum in terms of our results last season. We never went on huge winning runs, and we never went on really awful winless runs either. But as a club, it just feels like this. It feels like the club's on the runway, you know, and it's this massive, you know, airliner which is just getting faster and faster and getting ready for takeoff. And that's what it really feels like. You know, the momentum is behind us, you know, in general, bigger picture wise there. So look, if we can achieve if Granit Xhaka can deliver a European trophy to us, who am I to argue against that?
Against Newcastle in December, Luke gave the pre-match speech, and he specifically mentioned to a lot of the newer lads that photo they took after the 3-0 defeat in the cup in our stadium. And that's, like you said, it's like irrelevance. Like, that had no relevance to Xhaka. It had no relevance to Dodi Mukwele. Had no relevance to Enzo Lefebvre. They weren't even at the club then. But it had relevance to 09, to Dan Ballard, to Trey Hume, to Chrissy Rigg, all these players who were there then in the squad. And the rest of the squad wanted to win that match, wanted to take that photo in front of the Roker end for them. Now, hopefully we can get Granit to give a speech before the first Europa League game or whatever and tell the squad what it meant to him and the fact he lost. And we can get behind him like Argentina did behind Messi in 2022. Like, that, he's that sort of powerful leader, that sort of inspirational presence where you'd want to go win it for him.
Well,
now, I'm sure,
experience, isn't it? You know, these lads have got such a variety of experience. Sorry, James, to cut in front of you there, but
yeah.
But that is what this is all about. It's about bringing what your lived experience as a footballer is, into what the future holds as his club. And you're absolutely right. Like Ballard, I remember Ballard saying how much that hurt them taking that photograph. And again, we talk about converting it into fuel. That should drive these lads forward.
I think that's another very important reason why keeping hold of Xhaka at the start of the summer was so
Yeah.
important to what we actually want to do this season, because he's just integral and pivotal to absolutely everything on and off the field. Now, we've got a few questions just to wrap this podcast up. James, I'll come to you on this. Sean Cottrell has asked, if you had a choice between picking Mundle or Tutierov for our Europa League squad and the other one to go out on loan, who would you pick? He says, I would keep Tutierov as he is sharp, unafraid, and can get goals, whilst Mundle seems to be playing within himself and needs more games for confidence. And, it's an interesting one with Mundle, isn't it? Because I think this is a pivotal moment in his career, whether he stays, goes, gets a chance, what have you, because he's not really kicked on for a number of reasons, primarily injury, since we first saw him break through into the side, has he?
Yeah, it is. It's a difficult question, to be honest, because I think Mundle's got more first team experience that would probably cater to the Europa League. But I think Sean's right. It does look like he is playing a little bit within himself. And I think it's the injuries. Like, he's constantly had the same injury 3 times. And he looks like a player who's scared of doing it again. And I completely understand that. It must be horrendous to have the same injury setback again and again. When when it's not just the game that you love, it's also your livelihood as well. That's what's stopping you. It must be really hard, but I do agree. I do honestly think he looks a little bit like he's playing within himself. Now, I'm not 100% sure if Mundle is Premier League, Europa League quality. I don't think he will be, but because of those injuries, he's never had a chance to prove anybody wrong in that aspect. Tutierov, it might be a little bit too early. He was only playing for a relegated team in League One last season, but he looks really promising. He's looked great in the first 2 pre-season games when he was getting when he got a regular chance, got the start against York, and then came on and scored in the second half against Liverpool. And then when he played up front against Leeds, he was actually really good up front, to be honest, with Wilson not being able to play. I was surprised. I've been pleasantly surprised by how good Tutierov's been. I might be right in thinking, I believe they're both homegrown. Mundle definitely is. And I believe Tutierov is as well. But Tutierov, because he was born after January 2005, 1st of Jan 2005, he would be a B-list squad player. He wouldn't necessarily be named in the A-list. So you could technically have both, whereas Mundle would definitely give you a homegrown spot in that A-list. Transfer direct was probably, God, it's so hard. It really is hard, because I think personally I would just edge towards Mundle purely because of that first team experience that he's already got under his belt. Tutierov is a bit much of an unknown gamble, I think, and personally I think he would benefit from hopefully a good championship loan this season.
No, it'll be interesting to see what they do, won't it? Because I think Mundle, if he is fit and he is confident within his own body and psychologically he's kind of getting over those injuries, he needs regular football, doesn't he? He needs to have a regular run of games and be able to demonstrate he can actually play Premier League football for us or for somebody else. So it'll be interesting to see how that pans out, because I suspect Mundle, if he's able to, will want to play maybe a little bit more regularly than we'll be able to offer him.
Either way, at best, they're both third choice left winger anyway. At present, with Talbi and Angulo.
That's right. And who else comes in during the summer to knock them even further down the pecking order remains to be seen, of course. Ian, I'll come to you on this question from Dave SAFC. He says, why do you think Regis Labrys has never tried to swap Hume and Mukiele and play the big guy right midfield? Pace, power, defensively brilliant, but has a better end product than Hume. It's an interesting one, isn't it? Because we've seen Mukiele sort of roam down that right-hand side from right back at times and produce some good crosses and set up some goals. But Labrys has never started a game like that. Is there any reason you can see why he hasn't tried that? Or is there something a little bit deeper in terms of the positions and tactical play that you get the best out of them in the positions that he has been deployed in so far?
Look, I just think with Mukiele, you really have to play the guy's strengths, and his pace and his power his aerial ability. He's so much better served where he was utilised last season. I get what Dave's saying, absolutely. And Hume has come in, and people have been quite quick to kind of jump on that as the reason for why, as a person to criticise, because criticism is very few and far between last season, and people obviously do like to focus on particular players at any one time. But Hume did a good job there, but also highlights the fact that we need a right winger. Mukiele coming from deep though, and Mukiele bombing from deep was one of his real USPs last season, and that only kind of works when you're coming from kind of down right, basically at full tilt from right back. If you're starting from a right midfield position, that's kind of a bit less subtle, a bit less obvious. So no, I frankly, until I saw Dave's question, I had never even considered it. To be honest, I'd never even thought of it. I could understand why it might be the case. People like to sort of think, oh, would players play, at different sort of levels of on the wing? We used to say, would James play at left back, for example? But I know. I just think just keep the guy in defence. We really need him. We really need him there because I also suspect that his organisational skills as well, and his ability to work in tandem with a settled back line is really invaluable. And players like Alderete get a lot from that, because Alderete is a bit of a mad dog, isn't he? And you never quite know what he's going to do. So he needs he kind of needs someone like Mukiele alongside to complement him. So yeah, absolutely. If Trey Hume got injured or whatever, and we absolutely had no options on the right wing, you might come to him. But apart from that, I would say no.
It's a funny one, Nordy, because he's both probably our best centre back, our best right back, our best right centre back in a 3, and our best right wing back. So if you could just clone him and play him in all 4 of those positions, we're absolutely laughing.
No, I've said that a few times. If you clone Mukiele, you would have him first choice in at least 2 positions, if not 3, when you were naming your starting 11. And it's interesting if you look at the way that Trey Hume, when he's playing in that sort of narrow midfield role, the way that he takes up positions to actually enable Mukiele to overlap when Mukiele's playing right back. And I actually think, even though when you look at the lineup, you see Mukiele in defence and Trey Hume on the right wing. And I actually suspect we'll see a lot more of that this coming season. I don't think that'll go away anyway, and I don't think it should. But Hume doesn't necessarily play as a traditional right winger, doesn't he? He comes in, he tucks in, and he drops deep and covers for Mukiele pushing up. So if you actually looked at the average positions during the course of a game, when Mukiele and Hume are in those positions, I actually think that you'd see Mukiele a bit more advanced than you might expect him to be, because Hume creates space for him to go into. So it's a really interesting one, but I think there's a little bit more to it than saying Trey Hume's playing right midfield and Mukiele is playing right back, and we should swap them. I think
that's right, Martin.
Things.
I personally think the club are preparing Hume to play a different role in the future. Like, I think Lebris adores Hume. Like, he absolutely loves everything about Trey Hume. His ability, his defensive work rate, his football IQ, his passion, his everything about him. Lebris is a perfect Regis Lebris player. I personally wouldn't be surprised if the club wants Hume to develop in a different role and perhaps play in midfield. Personally, I could see the club thinking that he could take over from Xhaka. Now, will he or not? That remains to be seen. Probably not. But I'm just trying to look at it at what the club are thinking. And you're right, he doesn't actually stay on the right very often. It's all basically, when he plays right back, he's an inverted wing, a full back. When he plays right wing, he's practically playing centre midfield. And then someone else will bomb on Mukiele more often than not, with his running ability out wide, will bomb on beyond him. I mean, that goal against Wrexham showed that perfectly. Nordy gets the ball out wide, plays it up to Hume, who then comes in narrow and plays into Robbie. And it's not Hume making the overlap around the outside, it's Nordy who's making the overlap to link up with Robbie in the box. I wouldn't be surprised if the club are thinking potentially to have Hume in a different role in the long term, because I just know that Kazolfi and Lebris both absolutely adore him and want him at the club for a very long time. And they're finding ways to put him in the team, specifically to develop him, specifically so he doesn't stagnate. And I think they probably know that Nordy is a better right back, but they also know that Hume is so versatile that he can contribute elsewhere. I just wouldn't be surprised to see him, say, play against a pot 4 Europa League team, perhaps as an out-and-out midfielder.
What I would say, so this has turned into a little bit of a Trey Hume loving rather than a Nodi Mukiele question, but I would honestly say that Trey Hume's footballing intelligence is remarkable, because he is probably the best example for me of a guy who's asked to play a role which is one of the most complex in football. Like, nobody really can. It's very difficult to get your head around exactly what Trey Hume does, and because people don't necessarily see that as something quite obvious in the normal sort of constructs of a football formation, people are kind of a bit suspicious of that. But as you said, Martin, the way that he, manipulates space, pulls defenders out of position to enable others to exploit the space left and behind, it is the most valuable thing that you could possibly do, because, we've all seen Sunderland play this formulaic football in the past, where you can just see them not getting through a standard sort of, 2 banks of 4 or a low block or whatever, and just having no invention. But when you pull players out of position and when you get them out of their comfort zone and force them to defend in ways in which they don't want to do, then that is when you have success. And that's what Trey Hume does. He's an agitator, and he mixes things up. And that's what's so good about him. And, it's to his absolute credit that he does that really difficult role without complaint as well, because it's a bit of a thankless task. Because, as I say, people don't necessarily realize what he does, but he does it so well. And if you ask Nodi Mukiele, who is the key to your success for some of the goals and assists he's got last season, it would be Trey Hume. That's who he would say, because, he is that guy that, enables him to do the things that he does.
No, that's right. And I think I made this point on podcasts during the course of last season. It was at the time where people were criticising Trey Hume when he was playing right midfield for his end product and his quality on the ball and all that sort of stuff. And, as we talked about with other players, and as James has talked about just now, he's improving, the club are developing him, and he is getting better and better. But I made the point that when you're watching Hume in that position, you watch him without the ball as much as with the ball, because the positions he takes up and the cover he provides when other players are moving forward, and the space he takes up to enable other players to move into, it's part of a far greater plan. And he's a very, very vital cog in that plan. And, we started the podcast talking about transfers and right wingers and all that sort of stuff. I would put a lot of money on Trey Hume starting the season in that right wing, right midfield position. And
yeah, I agree.
He'll be the man with the shirt, and it's up to somebody else to come and take it off him. It's one that people should not underestimate the importance of that, because it is vital. It was vital to us at the end of last season. We're going to wrap up with an email from Philip Mann. Now, I must admit, I did not know whether this was a genuine one or not when it came in. I don't know if Philip's dictated this email or not, and I'm not going to take on an American accent for it. It says, "Hey, y'all. New Sunderland fan from South Louisiana here. Really enjoy y'all's podcast. Been listening every day since May the 24th. What a game versus Chelsea. It's what got me hooked. I just wanted to reach out to see if y'all had any advice for a new Sunderland fan. I've embraced the club as much as I can as seemingly the lone Sunderland supporter in Louisiana. If y'all could point me in the right direction, aside from the Netflix series, to learn about the club, I'd really appreciate it. However, lads, now I would, first of all, Philip, point you to the hundreds of hours of On This Week podcasts. If you delve back through our podcast feeds, you will find everything you could possibly want to know about Sunderland AFC history. But Ian, do you have any pointers for Philip outside of obviously listening and consuming hours and hours of podcast fun?
Well, my advice to you, Philip, would be actually you need to watch Sunderland Till I Die backwards, and that's when you get the subliminal messages and someone's just saying "fuck the mags" for about 80 hours. And that's how I got indoctrinated. So, that would be my first, my first bit of advice. Look, Joe, I saw this question. I thought, my God, whether you're taking the piss or not, Philip, this is a really interesting question. How do you because I'm kind of, in the midst of it, in the middle of this with my 6-year-old daughter, who's kind of, interested in football. I'm not quite sure whether she's interested because I'm sort of imposing it on her, or whether it is because she is genuinely interested, or because I buy her those big packets of Sunderland sweets whenever I take her to one of the ladies' games at the Stadium of Light. So, look, absorb as much Sunderland literature as you possibly can. Read all the books out there on the club, and tap into the books which really kind of give you a. I mean, look, I'm looking at one right now, and I'm going to hold it up to Martin and James on the podium. Sunderland, Stoke, and
Brilliant. Yeah.
73. Read Sunderland. Sorry, I'm going to start that again. I can get the title right. Read. I'm getting excited about it. I think, what a book. Stoke or Sunderland in 73 by the late great Lance Hardy, who's very sadly no longer with us, is the best book that you can read on Sunderland, because it gives you, whether you were alive or not back in 1973, it gives you the overview of what it's like to support the club from through the eyes of somebody who loves the club. And it talks about our greatest moment in history, obviously the FA Cup win, and it just sums the place up. It is beautifully written, and it is just it's a magnificent book. It's a wonderful book. I'm assuming it's still available from all good bookstores or Amazon or wherever you might choose to get it from. But I would recommend read Stoke or Sunderland 73, and that will tell you everything you need to know. Aside from that, listen to any podcast I'm on or read anything I've written for the website, because clearly all opinions contained within are accurate and cannot be argued with.
Very good. And James, your top tips?
Yes, I think it sounds like we're going to be plugging some of Lance Hardy's books, but the Tales from the Red and Whites is it's kind of like an edited volume of different stories from people of Sunderland note in the past. And there's like 3 volumes of it, 1, 2, and then 3, which is specifically managers, which gives like good exposés on Sunderland in the past of people's own personal points of view. If you're a big documentary watcher, I think it's not the greatest documentary in the world. It's just basically a bit of marketing from the club. But there's a video on the club's YouTube channel called Till the End, the playoff story of Sunderland's promotion, which kind of nicely outlines the playoff win and everything around the Coventry game and the Sheffield United games in the Championship. The Lugo 9 stories so far on the club's website, as well as on the club's YouTube channel and website, as well as kind of gets behind kind of a lot of the nicely outlines the issues that were faced during the darker years in League One and the Championship, and make them way up and through. If you've got time, I love Lee Howey's autobiography, Massively Violent and Decidedly Average. It's just
brilliant, isn't it?
Great.
Really good.
It's class.
It's really funny, and it's possibly the greatest name for a book ever. So yeah, if you want to go through a bit back of further older history, like the 90s and the Reedy days, go through that. Obviously, the last time we were this good. And then I think just on Roker Report as well, if you go through our sort of categories, I think there's a history section, or if not, there should be, because we've, throughout the years, former writers like James Copley, who's now at the Echo, done a lot of history writing. Myself, we're both we both have history degrees, so we've got a kind of a vested interest in that. So we've both published a lot of articles in the past on Sunderland's history, like the Mr. Smith scandal that Kelvin wrote about recently. A lot of Kelvin's writing on the website as well comes from a historical perspective. It is Kelvin's own lived perspective as well. Mine and James is obviously, James used to worry for us, was kind of like, as interested sort of history students and historians looking back to an era that we were never part of. Like I wrote about the unfortunate death of Jimmy Thorpe. James himself, I remember writing about the Mr. Smith scandal, whereas Kelvin, when he writes it, it's a lived experience from someone from their time, so who can harken back to things that he remembers as a younger boy, as a younger man. So it's a lot of Kelvin's writings on the website is really always worth reading as well.
I would say just one other thing there as well. So I put it in the chat just on the side there in capital letters. And people might be sort of shouting this as we haven't said it first, but there is on YouTube. You can watch it in fine grainy VHS quality. The documentary from 1996-97 season, the Sunderland's first in the Premier League, Premier Passions, which we will obviously all be very, very familiar with. It is the gory detail with nothing spared about the inner workings of a Premier League football club, which is unlike any polished PR managed massively sort of edited in a certain sort of way documentary that you might find these days. It is essentially the kind of antithesis of modern day football club documentaries, because it's
Yeah.
real. Watch that. That'll tell you about, if from someone like me who supported the club since the mid-90s. That was kind of like my starting point, really, following the club, because it made me realize, it gets, really fires gets a fire lit under you, thinking about that and that time of the club's history, because so much of what we see today has kind of flowed from that, and you can trace the history. And then what I would say is then read Bob Murray's autobiography. It's a long one. It's good. Again, ghostwritten by Lance Hardy. But that gives a lot of the context, a lot of all what happened there. And it's a fascinating period in the club's history. And I think all the episodes are on YouTube. Not a great quality, but as in terms of the actual, it's not Ultra HD or anything like that. But it sums the club up beautifully, and you see so much of what's in that then that is still there now today.
I think to follow up, Ian, as well, on YouTube, you can still get Meanwhile Back in Sunderland. For anyone, I mean, all those of us who are sort of from the area will know what it is, but anyone who isn't, it was basically on the 5th of May 1973, we played Leeds and won the FA Cup last time we won the FA Cup. And this is like a 25-minute, I think, documentary by Tyne Tees Television, which aired 2 days later, which is basically just, instead of showing the match and all the Sunderland fans and the droves going down to London, it shows like the basically the eerie, empty streets of Sunderland as the entire town at the time just packed into houses, pubs, and televisions anywhere they could find a telly to watch the match. And it's kind of incredible viewing, to be honest.
No, it's brilliant television. The other book I would recommend to you, Philip, is one by Rob Mason, got released a year or two ago, The Definitive History of Sunderland AFC. Rob, of course, is a friend of the podcast, as well as being Sunderland's official historian. Anything you can get your hands on, written by Rob Mason, is a good read. And there's tons of stuff on YouTube. I think the history video that they brought out maybe in the early 90s, I think that's all on YouTube, which chronicles all of the stuff right back from the very, very early days. So even if you just take those recommendations that we're giving you, you will be busy until about 2030. Then you can email us again for more tips, because there is so much Sunderland content out there. But that should give you a good start. And if anybody else is listening from Louisiana and wants to be put in touch with Philip, drop us an email and we'll see if we can get a branch of the Sunderland Supporters Association Louisiana started.
There is one brilliant book that's really hard to find now, but it's former famous football journalist Arthur Appleton wrote a book published in 1957, 1956, I think, called Hotbed of Soccer. And it's literally where the term the Northeast being a hotbed of football comes from. Yeah. And it's a history of the entirety of Northeast football. It's quite hard to find. I think it's available on archival websites, but basically it's brilliant because it's all before our first ever relegation. It's all before the Mr. Smith scandal and all the forced relegation due to financial misconduct. So it's basically just about Sunderland being mint, being like the top dogs of Northeast football from like 1879 all the way through to 1957. And I read it a couple of years ago and I was just fascinated by it, because imagine telling the author what was going to happen in 6 months' time and then telling them what would happen for 60 years after that.
That's mad. I've never read that book. Have you got that, James?
Yeah.
Oh, can I borrow it?
Yeah, sound. I'll bring it next time I record.
Oh,
never mind the Louisiana branch of the Sunderland Sports Association. We're starting Haway, the podcast book club here, aren't we?
Yeah. And I would say as well, just one other thing, just about Northeast football. It's Sunderland do feature in this, but any book by Harry Pearson is brilliant as well. So he's done two, the Far Corner and the Farther Corner, which is basically it's a look at is mainly the Northern League, which is a semi-professional league in the Northeast. But it's just beautifully written. It features a lot of Sunderland as well as Middlesbrough. I think Harry Pearson's a Middlesbrough fan, but it's just, if you want to kind of get a flavour as to what football is like up here, read those books as well. They're brilliant and they're very funny too.
You know what you could do? You could read the Stoke 73 Lance Hardy book. You could watch what's going on currently. And then you could start reading everything else about Sunderland history, starting back from day one, because it would take you quite a while to get to 1958. So you enjoy the 73 Cup final, you can enjoy the current goings on, the Europa League quarter-final James has promised us, and there's Division 1 championships, title wins, the FA Cup glory in the 30s. There's so much stuff. You can just miss out the chunk in between that, and there'd be all glory all the way for Philip there, wouldn't it?
Yeah, miss out 2018 to 2022.
Yeah,
Never
don't go back
happens.
and look.
Never happens.
Miss out 1987. That didn't happen.
Year I was born, but well, whatever.
No, if you read a rumor about a very good manager from Southampton taking over Sunderland in the mid-80s, just skip past that one as well. Right. I think we'll wrap that one up today. So thank you very much, Ian. Always a pleasure.
No worries. A pleasure. Yeah. Thanks
And
very much.
thank you, James.
Thanks, Martin.
Gav will be back tomorrow. He's got an opposition preview pod. Looking forward to the Lons game on Saturday with Ujes Honera. And I've absolutely butchered his name, but he's a special guest, a Lons fan. And of course, we'll be back with match day previews, match reaction, and all of that sort of stuff over the weekend. So until tomorrow, it is goodbye from us.